Hello, and welcome to Empower Hour topic sessions. Today, I want to talk about what a hiring manager is thinking. I was recently asked that question, and I actually do believe I know the answer, so I will share that. And I also want to take it a little bit further and share 3 ways that you can stay competitive in the interview process. So I'm not going to leave you in any suspense. I'll go ahead and come on out right away with what a hiring manager is thinking. So as a recruiter, I have worked with lots of hiring managers over the years. Of course, I haven't worked with all of them, but I do still believe I know the answer to this question. So, what is a hiring manager thinking? They are thinking how you do anything is how you do everything. And so the interview process, this is an opportunity for you to demonstrate just that, what you will, because how you conduct yourself in the interview process is how you will conduct yourself in the job should you win the job. So how you do anything is how you do everything in the interview process, but also in life. So for example, if you are someone who sets goals for yourself and sets your own deadlines and achieves those, and you're somebody who knows what you want and you go after it and you persevere even when the going gets tough, well, that's exactly what you are going to do on the job. And so I'm going to dive more into that, but let me just give a quick little introduction and background into who I am and what I do and why I feel qualified to speak on these topics. I'm a recruiter and I'm a hiring coach and consultant, helping leaders hire with confidence, eliminating unnecessary stress in their interview process and make lasting hires. And I also love working with professionals and helping them identify and pursue what it is they truly want in their professional life and career. All right, so let's get into it. How you do anything is how you do everything. And an example would be each step in the interview process is an opportunity for another first impression and or another impression. And it actually starts with your resume. So oftentimes you may be working with a recruiter initially, but I'm going to give an example of how, a couple examples of how starting with a resume, I'll give this example first. Sometimes I'll see a resume. I've seen lots of these kinds of resumes where they're super long. Maybe instead of bullet points articulating just the important pieces of your background, maybe if you're in sales, who you call on. So who are your customers and call points? What is your product or service that you're selling? And then how has your performance been? So this is key information. I have seen a lot of resumes without any of that information, but really, really lengthy resumes. So maybe 2 pages, maybe 3 pages. Ideally, you want your resume 1 page. It can get a little bit more challenging as you further grow in your career. But the point is that a lot of times folks with these longer resumes have left off the key information. And so that shows inability to prioritize what is meaningful, inability to be efficient with time management, meaning getting right to the point. Here is the important information. A hiring manager wants to be able to and a recruiter wants to be able to quickly glance at your resume and come away with where you worked, exactly what your role was there, exactly what the product or service that you sold or whatever your responsibilities were, and then what are your accolades? What did you achieve? So if you present a resume that has none of that key information on there, but then is really lengthy with lots of other words that don't mean that much, most of the time, if not all the time, that candidate presents the same way in the interview. So it shows wasting time, inability to be efficient with the other person's time and prioritizing what is meaningful. So that's an example of how you present yourself on the resume is how you're going to present yourself in the interview. Once I called a candidate, I'm always calling candidates, right? And I often like to start by asking them what they're up to. Just personally, I'm curious. I like to envision the person that I'm talking to in their environment and get a better understanding and picture of what their day-to-day is. So that can vary, depending on the role. But yeah, so oftentimes I'll start by, how's your day? What are you up to today? And once a candidate told me he had been laid off, so that's an unfortunate position to be in. I understand that. He said, he was laid off, so he's not working right now. And he said, quote, "I am watching the construction outside of the window." So how we do anything is how we do everything. I knew right then that the job that candidate got his next job, which was not going to be the one I was recruiting for, he would still be watching the construction outside the window. So then I've spoken with other candidates who were laid off, and they were just back from the gym early in the morning, hopping back on the computer, applying for more jobs. So each step in the interview process is an opportunity to demonstrate how you are going to show up in the role. So that is what a hiring manager is thinking. How you do anything is how you do everything. And if you're not pleased with how you're doing everything in your life or in a certain area of your life, maybe give some thought to that. Maybe you're not in the right spot, and that's why you're not motivated to do the work required. Maybe a different topic for another video. So that's what a hiring manager is thinking. Now, 3 ways that you can stay competitive in the interview process. The first one is follow-up. Follow-up is key throughout each step in the interview process. And that includes sending follow-up thank yous, but not just any kind of follow-up thank you. You want each touch point to be purposeful and meaningful throughout each step in the process. And I actually recommend to give yourself a little bit of time and not send the follow-up thank you email directly after the interview, like right after. Maybe give yourself 1 hour, 3 hours. Definitely send the follow-up the same day, because that shows proactive, strong follow-up and attention to detail and a vested interest in the opportunity. But sometimes if you're like me, it can take a little bit of time to gather our thoughts, to formulate those questions, for those new ideas to come in. So maybe after speaking with the hiring manager in the interview, a little while later, you think, oh, I actually have a question about this, or you get an idea about how you can continue your research, or you recall something that you guys spoke about that further piqued your interest. Well, that's an example of something purposeful that you can then share with the manager. So you do always want to keep it brief. So brief but specific. Rule of thumb throughout the whole interview process, including in your emails. You don't want to give a super lengthy email for a hiring manager to read and give them more homework. They don't really have time for that, but they do want to hear from you and they want to see your vested interest. So strong follow-up throughout the process, meaning a purposeful touch point after each step in the process. And maybe for one of the steps, the hiring manager has you meet with or call somebody else on the team, either meet them for coffee or have a phone conversation to learn more about the role and ask them some questions. That's another great opportunity for another touch point, even after that conversation. So then what you want to do, of course, is sit and take some time to research that individual that you're going to be connecting with, form some good questions, some thoughtful questions for them. But then after that meeting or phone conversation, you want to send that individual a purposeful follow-up email. And I also recommend doing the same to the manager, because they gave you that opportunity to have another connection with someone at the company. So you want to thank them for that. But again, you also want to be purposeful. So maybe you can recap a couple things that you guys shared that further piqued your interest. So that's an example, or that's what I mean when I say a purposeful follow-up email. And you want to do that throughout each step in the process, always the same day, but give yourself a little bit of time. You know, if it's immediately after, you probably haven't had enough time to really let all of the information sink in. And I have had managers in the past say, Amy, I'm not moving this candidate forward because they didn't send a follow-up thank you email. And I totally get that 100%. And I might do the same if I were a hiring manager, because they want to see that you want this job. And if maybe you do really want the job, but if you're not demonstrating that strong, purposeful follow-up throughout the interview process, then you're more likely to not demonstrate strong follow-up and quick turnaround time and attention to detail in the role once you get the role. So strong follow-up, that's number one. Then the second thing you can do to help stay competitive in the interview process, this is a tip that I talk about a lot, and it can help in all areas of life, and that is to get and stay curious. How you can apply curiosity in the interview process is around the questions that you have throughout each step in the process. You want to have questions throughout every step of the interview process. You should never come to a point where you have all of your questions answered. You might get to a point where you have enough questions answered to know that you want the opportunity, and that's great, but you can never know everything. And the more curious you are, the more interested you are. If you are moving through an interview process and you have no questions, you probably don't have much interest. So pay attention to that. But I bring this up because I often get asked, Amy, what are some good questions that I should be asking in the interview process? And I get this question from very tenured, seasoned, experienced folks up to leadership level roles, and also career up and comers. And I like to turn that question back around to the candidate. I mean, of course, I'll share some ideas, but you want to dig deep within yourself. Actually, take some pressure off is my initial recommendation. Take some pressure off, take a deep breath, and just get curious and think, what do I want to know at this step in the process to help me assess what I need to know so that I can figure out enough information to know if I want to move forward. What do you want to know about, that's going to help you assess if you're going to be good in this role, if you have the qualifications that they're looking for, if you have some of them, but not all of them, how can you get those qualifications? And are you going to enjoy the role? So don't be afraid to get super curious, and don't be afraid to ask the questions that you need to know the answers to. We all want to be wanted, but if you try to fit yourself inside a box that doesn't fit, then it's not going to fit a year later, and you're going to be back in the same position looking again, and then have that movement on your resume. And more importantly, that disruption in your life. Changing jobs can be quite stressful. So it's okay to be picky. It's okay to it's good to have a lot of questions. So get curious about what you want to know for that step in the process. You do want to be asking relevant questions for that step in the process. So your questions are going to expand throughout each step in the process. My first question that I would have in an initial interview is day in the life, because I need to be happy. I need to understand what I'm going to be doing. I need to picture myself in that role to know if I'm going to like it. So give yourself a little bit of a breather and take some pressure off, and get curious about what you want to know, and then let your curiosity grow and expand and build as your questions do, or to help you shape your questions throughout each step in the process, because good questions are very important. I also had a hiring manager once who was ready to make a candidate an offer. He did have her go ahead and go through the field ride step, because that was just a part of the process. But aside from that, he was ready to make her an offer, and he was excited. I was excited. She was excited. But then on the field ride, she took her foot off the gas. She just kind of coasted, and I think she thought, she had the job. But even if you do have the job, you're in the field experiencing a day in the life. Lots of questions should be coming to mind. You want to demonstrate active engagement and vested interest, and she had no questions. And for that reason, they didn't offer her the job. And then we had to start the process over again. So, if you don't have questions, you're probably not that interested. So give some thought to that. So number one, how you can stay competitive within the interview process is strong follow-up throughout. Number two, get curious. And number three, get creative. So this is going to help you stay competitive, but also better set yourself apart from other candidates in the process. And I always recommend not focusing on other candidates, what they might be doing and might not be doing, because you don't have any control over that. You only have control over yourself. So what I mean by get creative is think about ways that you can further yourself in the process, maybe even when you're waiting to hear back for the next step, when that's going to be and what that is. How can you continue demonstrating your interest in the opportunity? What assignments can you give yourself that the hiring manager hasn't given you? If you want to if you're really interested in the opportunity, you will enjoy all of these steps. You will enjoy the follow-up. You will enjoy getting curious about your questions and getting them answered, and you will enjoy getting creative. So maybe one thing you could do is connect with some other folks on the team or within the industry. I do think it's a good idea to check with the hiring manager and first, because sometimes for whatever reason, depending on the role, depending on the dynamic, what's happening, the company, they may not want you reaching out to folks at the company. So ask if that's okay. And then you can also demonstrate your resources by finding the contacts on your own, taking time to sit and prepare some questions, researching their background. And then after you have that conversation with that individual, individual follow up, send them a thank you, purposeful follow up, thank you email. And that also you then create another opportunity, a reason to have a purposeful touch point with the manager, because then you can reach out to them and say, hey, here's what I've been doing. Just wanted to let you know I spoke with so and so, or I connected with so and so in the industry, maybe not with the company, but I learned this XYZ, and that just got me even more interested and excited. Really looking forward to hearing next steps, and just wanted to share with you my progress and what I'm up to. So that's just an example of a way to continue pursuing the opportunity, working to be creative, to set yourself apart. Maybe a business plan is not required, but maybe that's something you want to put together. And if you do put that together, remember that's going to be a useful tool that's going to help you in stepping into the role to be more effective and impactful faster. So whenever you're considering ways that you can get creative and maybe set yourself apart, you want to keep in mind that each step that you take, you want it to be useful in helping prepare you to step into the role, rather than just checking a box that doesn't really do anything. So for example, a 30, 60, 90-day business plan where you don't have enough information to put something together impactful that is just too general is not really purposeful. So just a couple tips there. So that is what a hiring manager is thinking. How you do anything is how you do everything. I'd love to hear you guys' feedback on that, especially hiring managers, if you guys agree with me there. And tips on how you can stay competitive throughout the interview process. Definitely strong follow-up throughout. Definitely get curious. Use that tip in life as well to help you identify and prioritize what is meaningful and keep going in that direction with a positive attitude. And then get creative. How can you set yourself apart from other candidates? What can you do to demonstrate your drive and desire as you pursue this opportunity? And again, if you're pursuing the right opportunity for you and it feels right, you're going to enjoy doing all of these things. And then you'll be that much more excited for and prepared for the opportunity. Thank you guys so much for watching. Hope you have a great weekend. If you have any suggestions for topics that you'd like me to speak on, feel free to shoot me a note, and would love to hear your comments, any questions that you have as well. We'll see you next week.